don't you don't have anything to do? I have to hurry up and find something to do. I'm doing homework. Okay, but it would be like, okay, go paint the eaves, or then he started getting the neighbors to give me stuff to do, right? So it was all about work. We can't have idle hands in the house. But that's a picture of him, and so I just wanted to honor him, if that's okay. That's a picture of my dad in World War II. He'd be 102 years old now. That's the all-black regiment that he was in. If you could see the picture in the middle, oh, you can't. It's kind of blurry. And then that's the group that he was a part of in 1953, Progressive Men of 1953 Social and Pleasure Club. We're from people from Louisiana have pleasure and social clubs, this gatherings and those things. But I realized I found this when I was going through his stuff, and then I saw that I saw this, and I realized, oh, he was president of the club. So go ahead, Dad, you did your thing. All right. Oh, cool. So these were some of the songs I was going to go through with you. Okay, boom. Oh, here we go. This is where I am. So when we talk about, nice. So when we talk about slavery, I just said it, that's a white people's history of our black history. But I wanted to note we come from hundreds of different ethnic groups, right? People call them tribes. I'm saying ethnic groups that were really producers of culture, producers of literature, producers of ideas, intellect, creators of knowledge. So, for instance, when the slave traders would go to Africa, Gambia was a place where they were experts, horticulturalists. Let's call them horticulturalists, right? Let's put the name on it as a proper name. They were experts in rice farming. So, of course, they go there to bring them over to the United States. They're not just some people that just history happened, that they just happen to be here and they stumble onto this and they find stuff. No, we are creators. We're inventors. We are people who originate. And in this case, the Gambian people come over and essentially farm the rice. We could go to Senegal, and all the different places and portions of Africa were rich in iron ore. So in places like Ghana, go to Virginia in the slave trade, and in fact are become the greatest blacksmiths in this country, right? So and then not only are they producing, but their labor is colonized, and their labor is producing for the institutions in America. Is that making sense? So yeah, so we have been robbed of kind of knowing. I've been doing my ancestry stuff, so I know I come from the We people, the Fon people, who are the producers of this. But there's the Hausa, the Yoruba, the Akan, the Mande, the Fante. So all of these different groups, but these are the people that we descend from. And history didn't just act upon them. They were creators, they were producers of this, but their labor essentially was extracted from Africa. Okay, I made my point. I don't want to look at my wife. She might tell me to move on, right? Okay, all right. So this was my slide I wanted to show you all on workers versus non-workers. That's why I had to throw my little dig at the king and queen of England, right, as being the non-workers. And also, you can see those people who are not working are standing. From my visual, you can see it right behind me. Okay, so that was kind of like my illustration there, too, that the real workers are the people in the trenches every day, the people on the front lines and the unions and doing the work of this country. But the other people essentially are living on investments and living on other people's wealth, and they're playing golf and, yeah. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you guys one of my hangout spots. Let me do it like this. I started teaching some classes online, and I'm making a point from this. I started teaching the class online, and I said, you know what, let me go, because I didn't want to be at home doing it, right? I wanted to go somewhere and have some scenery. So I went to, I'll tell you all where I went. I went to Terranea out there, right? And Pastor knows about Terranea. So it's over in Palos Verdes, right? So I wanted to say, I'm at work, but I'm going to do some grading and stuff here. But I noticed on the way to Terranea, there were a whole lot of people that weren't working, right? But when in my neighborhood, everybody, people were working. Garbage truck was going, and the mailman, everybody was working. But I went there, and people are like jogging around the neighborhood, right? These ponytails bouncing, and I'm like, these people don't work, right? It's like, but they call them my brothers and sisters lazy, right? But no one was. But then I realized, well, what are the reasons that they're not working, right? The worker there I knew was me and Jeffrey, because somehow Jeffrey got in there and got him a coffee too. But I knew he was Jeffrey because he had a uniform on that said Jeffrey, right? And the other worker was a person serving coffee. But my point is, everybody else seemed to be on vacation, and they were living off of their wealth and their investments. Does that make sense? So when we talk about the workers, we're the workers. We're the ones putting in the work. In fact, African Americans, when we talked about, when they asked them about times of enslavement, one of the quotes, I'm supposed to move my slides. One of the quotes that enslaved people said, we work from can see to can't see, right? Which meant they worked all day long. They worked all day long. Some of the humor in this too, I was thinking Living Color. Remember the episode where where the guy, it was called Hey Man? And he would come in and he'd say, you lazy boy, you only have 15 job, right? Remember that? Okay, I thought I'd get a giggle out of you. But it's just the thing, the immigrant work ethic. We're going to work as many jobs. We're going to work. And, that was a little episode of the Hey Man there. You lazy boy, you better work some more. Then I also thought in humor too, Dick Gregory talked about that as well, that he had to go to the brig for impersonating an officer. And he said, I'm sorry I'm late, guys, but I had to go to the brig for impersonating an officer. They said, well, what did you do? He said, man, I slept till noon, So essentially, boom, 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 right? That the officers weren't working. It was a military personnel that was working. So again, we are the workers. Women in the movement have been hard workers. The Rosie the Riveters. If you go up north in Richmond, California, you see the women who were actually producing at the shipyards and that. So the black Rosie the Riveter. Somebody said, that's right. Somebody's family must have been there. It is. Your family was doing it, right? In Richmond, California. There they are. So let's see. We honoring them right now. We are Black history, right? These women who were leading in the defense industry. We also know that our labor was stolen from us, convict leasing. So a lot of times our men went to jail or were put in jail for minor offenses, for just being on the wrong side of the sidewalk. They would go to jail, and then they would actually steal their labor. This is after the enslavement, put them in jail, and then use their labor for industry, right? And then our sharecroppers, right? So we have been hard workers all along. We have mastered hard work. We are the hard workers. So sharecroppers working again from can see to can't see. Yeah, that's how we do it. Some of the historical figures I wanted to make mention of or highlight here for us would be Isaac Myers. So Isaac Myers is noted as the first president of a black union. He actually is a part of that union movement as early as 1868. So Isaac Myers and others established the Colored Caulkers Trade Union in 1868, which he was elected as president. The National Labor Union took interest in inviting Colored Caulkers Trade Union to their annual convention. The move was significant with a previously an all-white union, but black workers continued to face opposition to membership in response to the colored, right, different names for us. The Colored National Labor Union was established in 1869, and he became its president. The president after him would be Frederick Douglass. So we honor today Isaac Myers, the first leader of a black trade union. Is that all right? So we talk about, and that's a part of it. Remember, the theme for Black History Month this year from the Association of African Americans in Life is our trades, our union workers, our labor movement. Another one that I wanted to focus on here, and this is another reason. Oh, thank you, Sherry. I hadn't even hit the, oh, you guys didn't even see that, huh? Thank you, Mama. So this is Isaac Myers. I'm looking at this slide. This is Isaac Myers, and then, after Frederick Douglass would take over the Union. And then publications would come out of that too, so they were writing as such. Okay, so here it is, grand finale here. The reason why, when Pastor asked me to do this, the reason why I wanted to do labor movement is because I had just discovered in my family that my second great grandfather led a black labor union, and I was really proud. So it had just happened, Pastor, so it's kind of beautiful that it actually works out this way. And that's a picture. Can you see? Oh, okay, it's small, but that's him, Pierre Paul Barthé. That's on my mama's side. And that's his wife, Rosa Baltazar. Yep. So her line goes all the way to the Queen of Louisiana, but that's a whole nother story. I'll get carried away. I start talking about that. But let me talk about Peter Barthé. So again, my second great grandfather on my mama's side, y'all. So what did he do? He's also the leader in the labor movement. So he was the president of the Operative Plasters and Cement Masons, Local 93, a black trade union in New Orleans, Louisiana from 1896 to 1901. Isn't that cool? So I wanted to honor him in this talk today. Thank you, Pastor, for the opportunity. I think this is the first time I'm ever speaking publicly about my great-great-grandfather here, right? So it's cool. So, and in my family, there's a whole line of plasterers. That's what they were doing. Even my grandfather, my uncles, they were plasterers. So the Operative Plaster and Cement Masons International Association of the United States and Canada, Local 93, was founded in 1896 through 1901 in New Orleans by my great-great-grandfather, Pierre Barthé. It became one of the first African-American / Creole. That's a whole nother thing. Y'all don't want me to say Creole, but I had to say it. African-American Creole integrated unions in the world. Pierre Barthé, my great-grandfather, was also known as Peter Barthé. He's first president and founder. Happy Black History Month, right? And there are articles written on that as well. So I just had to do it to honor my own family history in the union movement. And essentially what they were doing too, they were the great plasterers of the world, went to other countries and did plastering, but essentially built New Orleans and plastered in homes. Even I remember my grandfather doing that. But the beautiful thing about it was ours. Now, one of the things that they did, and I noticed this, that Barthé name on my mama's side, y'all, they were all plasterers. So a lot of times in these unions, they were inviting all their family members in too. Y'all know how we do. You know how we did it at the post office and said, now this was on the test, and then you come on, let me help y'all out, and then started getting each other jobs and all that stuff. So my family did it with the plasterers. Okay, I'm trying to move from this slide, but I'm kind of stuck on it because that's family, y'all. So I'm a part. Isn't that true? Cool how we're a part, our families are a part of this history. We're a part of the U.S. and the fabric of it. All right. So, can't talk about African Americans and labor without acknowledging, did it move? Yes, A. Philip Randolph. Can't talk about it without acknowledging A. Philip Randolph, an attorney, union organizer of the March on Washington with the Brotherhood of the Sleeping Car Porters. Any family members who are a part of the Brotherhood? There it is right there. We honor your family for being a part of the Brotherhood of the Sleeping Car Porters. So they were granted their charter by American Federation of Labor and founded by A. Philip Randolph, and they were the leading movement within the labor movement for our country. Even had a publication to go with it, The Black Worker. So we know the work that they did was significant. A little history behind that too. A part of the sleeping car porters, when the leader, his name was George, I'm forgetting his last name, but the leader, the owner of the sleeping car porters, or the owner of the train line, he was doing a luxury line, and he got into this industry, the white guy, by inviting Todd Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's son, to be a part of the business with him. And when Abraham Lincoln died, they put his body on a glass train cart, and they moved his body throughout the nation, a certain region, in state, so people could honor Abraham Lincoln as he passed. So they recruited then for these luxury car lines in the sleeping car porters, these luxury trains, for formerly enslaved men to actually be a part of the sleeping car porters and to lead that, because they were excellent at service, right? They were gonna lead this. So essentially that's how the sleeping car porters became one of our powerful major unions in this country. So we have to acknowledge A. Philip Randolph and his work with the unions. So, founder of Sleeping Car Porters, 1925, received AFL charter, organize and plan. So that's another important point with A. Philip Randolph. He was able to organize and plan the 1941 March on Washington, which stopped, and we were supposed to have a March on Washington not just in 1963 under A. Philip Randolph, but President Roosevelt, because he didn't want the pressure of millions of people marching to Washington for black worker rights, he executed the Executive Order 8802, okay, which prohibited discrimination in employment based on race, religion, and creed, as a concession to A. Philip Randolph, and said, no, we're gonna stop the discrimination. And later on, Truman would integrate the thank you. I'm pressing it here, but not there, okay. Is that what you were telling me about, to move the slide? Okay. Yes. Wow. Amen. And see, we got it. Wow. Thank you for that. Thank you for that acknowledgement. Yes. So 1941, it was supposed to happen, but Sister Goins is a part of the movement that happens in 1963. Thank you for bringing that to us. So it included, so a part of the work of this labor movement, A. Philip Randolph, the prohibiting discrimination, the Executive Order 8802. All right. These are just visual of it. Some other folks that were important as a part of black labor would be Lucy Parsons, and she was in part of the radical labor organizer and co-founder of the Industrial Workers of the World. She advocated for workers' rights and women's rights and equality, powerful speaker, so that we honor Lucy Parsons. So these are other folks who are part of our labor movement. Addie Wyatt. I should back up a little bit when I talk about A. Philip Randolph. One of the influential workers with him was also a woman, I'm forgetting her last name, I didn't write it in my notes, but Maddie was her name, right? But she was also an organizer with the Brotherhood of the Sleeping Car Porters. I think I missed her in my notes. But we have Lucy Parsons, 1851, 1942. Addie Wyatt, first African-American woman to hold a senior office for American labor. She was a part of the Amalgamated Meat Cutters Union and founded the Coalition of Labor of Union Women. So our work has been long. Bayard Rustin, also an organizer in the 1963 March on Washington, key labor figure in the civil rights movement with A. Philip Randolph, and so this is a part of his contributions. March for Jobs. Dorothy Lee Bolden founded the National Domestic Workers Union of 1868, organized domestic workers and fought for better wages and conditions of employment. E.D. Nixon, I'm just doing a name drop on you all. Oh, I'm pressing them here, but not there. I'm so crazy. Or thank you, Sherry. All right, start from there. Okay, Lucy Parsons. That's just showing you the pictures of her as well, right? The one I just mentioned. Addie Wyatt. and Bayard Rustin. This is where I left off, right? And then E.D. Nixon, also a part of the black labor movement and president of the local Brotherhood of the Sleeping Car Porters in Montgomery, Alabama. Okay. William Lucy, Coalition for Black Trade Unionists. Another union leader, Velma Hopkins, co-founded the Food and Tobacco Agricultural Allied Workers Union. And I landed here that their contributions were, one, what were they doing? So one, this was important as a part of the black church. You also had the black union and the black labor movement, but they were breaking racial barriers in union leadership. They were actually valuing the labor of black folks in this country. So they broke the barriers. They were getting jobs for us, union jobs, right, or good paying jobs, solid jobs as a part of the union movement. They were collecting or connecting labor rights with civil rights. So that's why we see A. Philip Randolph, and we see the connection of civil rights with labor rights, because we had to get folks to work. They were creating new organizing models for African Americans. So not only following parliamentary procedures, going through contracts and studying how black people could advance through work with the right contracts. They were fighting discrimination in the workplace, because that's the whole purpose of the unions anyway, for us to get better terms of conditions and hours of employment, right? Better vacation time, 8-hour work weeks. Black people were a part of the entire labor movement in this country in the workplace. They were building coalitions across racial lines, as you can see with the families. If I go back to my, I didn't really even mention his name, I just saw the picture, but if I go back to my great grandfather, his name is Pierre Barthé, that union that he was president of, the Plasterers and Masons of New Orleans, Local 93, it was also they call it the Afro-Creole Union, but they also partnered with the Irish workers, the trade unionists from the Irish Coalition. They were the greatest plasterers in the United States. So they were making these, they were, what am I trying to say, bridges across culture. I'll park there too and talk about Pierre Barthé, my great-grandfather, with the union movement. A lot of people, when I was reading articles, and there's actually a whole, one of my cousins produced a whole dissertation on it. So this is the thesis on the trade unions from New Orleans Plasterers, Local 93, Afro-Creole family and organized labor. When they were doing it, they were building these connections, but people criticized him because there was a lot of people with his same last name that were in the union, right? So what I realized with that is that a lot of times people, what we do, and we see it today, is we're getting our families involved in these jobs too. Does that make sense in the black labor struggle? So if we go back to what I remember, like in the post office, usually when African Americans would get into the post office, they would study the exam, and then they would let their friends and family members know, oh, this is what you need to focus on. This is what you study this. And then, we become more postal workers, right? So we're just kind of helping each other get into those exams and that kind of stuff. So a lot of times even with my own family, there was a bunch of plasterers and bricklayers because that was the family business. So they were doing it like that. So people, you let your people in, you let the people you know in. And trade unions in this country were exclusive to African Americans. So this is an important movement. They established new labor organizations, as I mentioned, and they also would advance the rights of women. So if we land, I'm coming to my landing here, if we go, the whole fact that the March on Washington, Sister Goins, is really, the title was for March on Washington for Freedom and Jobs. So a part of this was to get African Americans to work, to get us into the workplace and to give us new opportunities. So Dr. Martin Luther King, in fact, how does he enter into this? Well, in fact, his last speech, I've been to the mountaintop, is all a part of the Memphis sanitation worker strike. So Dr. King was moving us because we knew if we could get these jobs and get this money and get paid, we could bring generational wealth to our families. We could buy property. We could invest in stocks. We could pay for college education. But Dr. King would also join the picket line to support the strike of the International Chemical Workers Union, 754, and he was doing that back in 1964. And then we know in April, essentially his assassination, he was working with the Memphis workers, the sanitation workers, to strike. So a great deal of African American history is pressed down to our labor, what we produce through our labor. And so Dr. King delivers his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. So what does that tell us? That tells us that African Americans in this country have contributed to the very foundation of it. Our labor, our work is really the foundation of this country. No one could outwork us. No one can outwork us. So I started with my dad saying he wouldn't let me be idle, had to paint something, pick up something, do something. And that's our tradition. Our labor has really produced this country. In fact, not only this country, but the entire world. We've been doing it. And the beautiful thing is the African American Association for Life and History that was started by Carter G. Woodson back in the 1920s. Dr. Carter G. Woodson tells us, essentially set up Black History Month in February because that's the year that we were studying presidents in this country, so in the history of this country. So Dr. Carter G. Woodson, here, let me move my slides. Dr. Carter G. Woodson said that in February, because no one gave us February, we took February. I have to kind of end it there. We took February. So Dr. Carter G. Woodson said that's the best time because they're actually, the whole country studying history. They're studying the presidents, right? President's Day is in February. So people say, we got the shortest month of the year. But Dr. Carter G. Woodson said, no, and he wrote The Miseducation of the Negro. He said, we're going to take it because that's when people are focusing on the presidents, and we're going to hit them with the Black power. We're going to hit them with Black history during that time. So the Association of African American Life, what we were supposed to do during Black History Month was to study the stories of how we made it over. We were to study the stories that really give us testimony, right? As a strong people, in spite of all that we've been through, we can still make it. So the whole idea was in February, that we would do conferences and we would talk about issues that impacted the community, and we would present our findings during February, as I'm sort of doing right here. Not just a talk on dumping on Black people did this, we were the first to do this, but actually saying, we've done this, we've contributed to the culture, and here are our recommendations for the future, just like you would do at any collegiate or any university conference. And that's what Dr. Carter G. Woodson was doing. And that's why in 1976, the Congressional Black Caucus took it even further and said that we will make February, since Dr. Carter G. Woodson did it in 1926, we'll make February Black History Month. And that's all a part of that, so we can look at this and be inspired by what our people have done. And I'll conclude it there. Last time I went over, this time I'm a little early, but I'll end there with my talk on the Black labor. We're good? Okay, thank you. Did we want to do any, some of you have contributions to this, so the sleeping car porters, we have any family members in the sleeping car porters yeah, see, there it is right there. So we acknowledge that with A. Philip Randolph. So who was it, your dad, grandfather, uncle? Grandfather was a part of the sleeping car porters. Yeah, one of our major unions in the country. Any other family stories about union leadership? Yes. That's it. Absolutely. So that was it. Yeah, it was supported. It was supported by the government. In fact, yes, beautiful. Yeah. So we honor your uncle, convict leasing. Yeah, they would do that. So after slavery, we were still enslaved. So the 13th Amendment. So if I could pause, put a pin on that. The 13th Amendment outlaws slavery except upon imprisonment. Right. So when we're in fact, the original word when we talk about an enslaved person was prisoner or prisoner of war. So when a person's in prison, they essentially, Ivan Van Sertima said, they're enslaved. So if you imprison a person, then you can use their labor, and that was what happened in convict labor with your uncle. Yeah, let's continue the yes. Yes. Can see to can't see. Yes. That that's our hit. Outstanding, outstanding. Labor, land. That's a part of the, yeah, that's where our wealth is really, and three-quarters of the wealth is really in getting property and those things. So thank God that your family has that. Yes, Sister Elliot. Yes. Hmm. 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 Outstanding, outstanding. I love how this is our history, right? And we're all included in it. So Brother Elliot, your family, right? How we all are a part of that movement. Yeah, in the Urban League, their whole purpose was to get us and to break those barriers and to get us into employment, right? So that we could have the dignity of work and get these jobs and make a difference. So our work has really our sacrifices have really produced this country. And then when we get in, we do really well. We do really well. We excel. We go to the top. Anyone else want to share their stories and work history? Yes. Tom Bradley and others who essentially, when we elect these officials, they're supposed to plead our case and to put us in these positions. So thank God he worked his shift as well. Outstanding. All right. So just like I did, I'm glad you were able to include your families in this too. And a part of when Pastor asked me to do this, I had really just learned about the operative plasters and masons contributions to the labor movement. I said, well, this is a part of my history, so I wanted to have an opportunity to share Peter Bartet, right, that that gave us jobs. In fact, from his contributions being this first integrated but led by African American trade union, essentially like I said, all of my family was in it, but it also produced things that still exist today. So one of my uncles shows me, he would always have a picture of the forum down in Inglewood, and he would show that he was one of the designers of, those pillars on the forum. So my Uncle Verdell, he was a part of that tradition of family that were in the Plasterers Union. So we were creators and builders and all that. And all of us have these stories of our work and our labor producing for us. So because Asala said that this month, and that's why I chose labor, but because Asala said that this month in this year the theme would be black labor, that's why I wanted to focus on that. So thank you, Pastor. This is the first time I had the opportunity to talk about my grandfather in that context, and then talk about labor. But thank you all. I'm pass it over to Pastor. Thank you.
Let's give Lance another hand. We are extremely blessed to have somebody like a Lance in our congregation. I'm in a lot of circles and go a lot of places, and oftentimes they ask me, do I know Dr. Lance Robert? I said, oh yeah, I know him very well, but we appreciate his knowledge. Some may think this is a little unique, what we're doing, taking time in Sunday school, to study black history, but it's not unique. The black church historically have done this kind of stuff. We've gotten away from it. Sunday school in the black church was not necessarily started to teach us the Bible. Sunday school was started in the black church to teach us how to read and write. And that was how that came about. And I believe we're in a day where we have to start teaching our own history. If the school is not going to do it, and the Jewish community, they don't leave that to nobody. It's automatically part of their family tradition to talk about their history. I mean, one of the best books I ever read was called The Jewish Phenomenon. It's an older book, but it just talked about the stuff that Jews do because for the most part, they're a very successful group of people. And one thing they do, they make sure that they teach their own history. And so we're going to do more of this because there's so much that we have contributed to this world that don't ever get mentioned, And one of the reasons why I believe this is essential for us to do, as Lance clearly pointed out, everything we've had or we received in this country, we had to fight for it. Don't ever let them tell you they gave us anything. None of this is a handout. It came as a result of our sweat, tears, and blood. And here's the challenge. Not only do we have to fight for it, we got to fight to maintain it. Because if we don't see what's happening today with Trumpism, and when I say Trumpism, I'm referring to an ideology, it's an attack on everything that brought us to where we are now. It's not by accident, and he's been very clear of it. And we have to unapologetically and unashamedly declare it, and that was made the black church contribution to history, to Christianity, is that we were a people who believe in speaking truth to power. Because there was no one else standing up fighting for our rights, the black church became instrumental. That's why this younger generation that want to hate on the black church don't know what they're talking about. Because many of them and their parents, they wouldn't have a job without the black church. And so it's important that we understand our history and be able to articulate it and defend it. I'll quit with this. I got in trouble last Saturday at a conference in San Francisco because there was a white pastor that was doing the conference, and he indirectly wanted to criticize the black church because we had an emphasis on social justice. And basically saying that that's really not the work and the mission of the church. And he was trying to base it on Luke chapter 4, verse 18 through 20, where Jesus says, I've come that he said, oh, there's somebody out there laughing. When Jesus says that I'll come to preach the gospel to the poor, to and set the captives free and the oppressed and all that, he's trying to make an argument that text had nothing to do with social oppression. It had to deal with spiritual oppression. That's what we call it, slave theology. Because basically he was trying to argue that Paul always told people when it came to issues where they've been oppressed by the government is to pray for your leaders, be peaceful and be quiet. They have always told us that. And Paul had an eschatology that says that Christ was coming back any day. They believe that. So they didn't believe. So Paul didn't necessarily address all the social ills because he figured Christ was going to come back any day. Well, we've been waiting for Christ to come back for 2,000 years. And that's toxic theology. To tell us that we are oppressed and we just got to just pray, don't protest, wait until Christ come back. That's easy for you to say. Yeah, that's toxic and dangerous theology. And there's a theology today that pressed that issue. And so we got to unpack all that stuff. So thank you again, Dr. Lance Robert, for an outstanding job. And I promise you we'll be doing more of this because I think it's so needed in our people. Amen. Let's get ready for our Sunday school offering. Yeah. What's that? Sister Thompson, we got too many of our black people think that way, and you're right. Yeah. Trump did one thing for black history. He invited certain black congressional people to the White House. Did y'all see the blacks that he invited? Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's an insult, yeah. Can you all just bring your offering to the Sunday school offering? Yeah, appreciate it. If you can't bring it, hold up your hand. Somebody will come and get it. Yeah. Carrie? Good. Can we pray over the offering? God, our Father, we thank you for these gifts. Bless it now. Thank you for those who have given, multiplied now. In Jesus' name, amen. Oh, what's say the Saint School motto? Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needed not be ashamed, but rightly